We live in a world where we're constantly told to be open, share, and connect. Vulnerability is often celebrated, and rightly so. But there is a deeper, more nuanced truth that we must recognize: not everything needs to be shared. There are parts of ourselves, deep personal things that should remain sacred, even in a world that encourages total transparency. Today, I want to talk about 7 things that you should never reveal to anyone, no matter how close you are. These 7 things: your insecurities, wounds, boundaries, internal battles, ambitions, failures, and emotions are part of your personal landscape. While sharing is important, there is a quiet strength in holding some of these truths within. Vulnerability is powerful, but it's not about revealing everything. It's about knowing when to protect and when to share, recognizing that you can still connect deeply with others without giving away all of yourself. Let's honor our own stories by safeguarding the parts of us that are still growing. We are worthy of love, connection, and support without having to reveal every piece of ourselves. Thank you. Your deepest insecurities. Insecurity is a natural part of being human, but it often feels like the hardest part to confront. These insecurities, whether it's our appearance, our abilities, or our place in the world, are typically tied to our deepest fears about not being good enough. It's a fear that runs so deep that it can feel like a vulnerability we don't want to expose to anyone, even to ourselves. These insecurities live in the quiet corners of our minds, shaping how we perceive ourselves and how we move through the world. Revealing these insecurities to others can often backfire, especially if we're seeking validation or reassurance in an attempt to quiet our self-doubt. What might feel like a moment of vulnerability can sometimes be seen by others as weakness or an invitation for judgment. The truth is, we are not always in control of how people will respond to our vulnerabilities. If we reveal our deepest fears to someone who is not equipped to hold that space for us, someone who may not understand or respond with empathy, it can do more harm than good. It can confirm the very fears we were trying to protect ourselves from, reinforcing feelings of inadequacy. There's a risk in giving away these parts of ourselves before we've processed them, before we've developed the internal strength to stand firmly in who we are. When we reveal our deepest insecurities prematurely, we risk being vulnerable without the armor of self-assurance. The goal should be to protect and nurture these fragile parts of ourselves until we are in a safe and supportive environment to share them, the unhealed wounds of your past. We all carry wounds from our past, whether from childhood, relationships, or experiences that shaped who we are. These wounds can range from minor betrayals to deep trauma, and they often define how we approach the world and relate to others. But some wounds are still raw, still unhealed, and they hold a vulnerability that is too fragile to expose to others before we've truly processed them. When we carry unhealed wounds, there's a tendency to want to share them, thinking that speaking about them will bring relief or closure. However, when these wounds are still tender, they have not yet fully integrated into who we are. Revealing them to others while still in the midst of healing can create a situation where we unintentionally invite others to hurt us again, either through misunderstanding, insensitivity, or simple lack of awareness. People may not fully comprehend the weight of our pain, and they may inadvertently minimize or dismiss our experience. Additionally, sharing these wounds before we've come to terms with them can lead to a cycle of seeking validation or sympathy, which may not offer the healing we're truly seeking. We may find ourselves sharing the pain in a way that doesn't empower us, but instead keeps us stuck in that same emotional place. It can feel like we're trying to drag others into our past to help us process, but this responsibility lies with us, not others. In these moments, it's important to remember that some parts of our healing journey must be done in solitude or with trusted professionals who can hold space for us. Revealing these wounds too soon can lead to re-traumatization or reinforce the belief that we are defined by our pain rather than by our strength and growth. Healing takes time, and the openness to share should come only when we have reached a point where the wound is no longer the center of our identity or personal boundaries, unless it's to protect yourself. Boundaries are the invisible lines that define who we are, what we need, and what we will accept from others. They are deeply personal and often evolve over time as we grow, learn, and navigate our relationships with the world around us. These boundaries protect our emotional, mental, and physical well-being, acting as a safeguard to ensure we are not overwhelmed, disrespected, or violated. However, not everyone is familiar with our boundaries. Some people may unintentionally cross them, either out of ignorance, carelessness, or because they haven't learned to recognize the signs that we need space or care. Revealing the full scope of our personal boundaries to others, especially before they are respected, can give people the blueprint to test or disregard those lines. When we open ourselves too much about what we will and won't tolerate, we risk letting others push against those limits before we have the chance to enforce them firmly. Boundaries are most effective when they are felt rather than spoken about constantly. It's one thing to say, this is what I need, and another to consistently show through actions where those lines lie. The more we share and explain our boundaries, the more we invite others to challenge them. If we're not yet strong in asserting those boundaries, revealing them prematurely can set us up for frustration or hurt, as others may not respect them in the way we hope or expect. In some cases, boundaries are better maintained in quiet strength, where we let others feel the absence of permission rather than explaining why we are saying no or not yet. In the early stages of establishing a boundary, it can feel empowering to keep it unspoken, as it provides clarity without the added burden of justifying or defending it. Only when we feel safe or the situation calls for it should we consider revealing the specifics of our boundaries to others. And even then, it must be done with careful intention and self-awareness, the internal battles you're fighting. Each of us has internal struggles that are not immediately visible to the outside world. These are the silent battles, the conversations we have with ourselves in the dark, the fears that whisper in our minds, the doubts that keep us awake at night. Whether it's a struggle with mental health, self-esteem, imposter syndrome, or unresolved feelings about past experiences, these internal battles can be exhausting and overwhelming. The truth is, no one truly knows the depth of what we're fighting within ourselves. Sometimes even the people closest to us have no idea of the emotional turmoil we're carrying. These struggles can be incredibly isolating because they live in a space that is uniquely ours, sometimes so deeply ingrained that it feels impossible to explain them to anyone else. And because these battles are so personal, sharing them before we've come to terms with them can feel like opening a wound to the full extent of your ambitions. Ambition is the driving force behind so much of what we do. It pushes us to dream big, set goals, and strive for success. It can be a powerful motivator, helping us grow, evolve, and achieve things we never thought possible. However, there is a delicate balance between sharing our ambitions and protecting them. The full extent of our ambitions, especially the boldest and most far-reaching dreams, are often deeply personal. These are the aspirations that define our vision for the future, the ones that are tied to our purpose, our deepest desires, and our sense of fulfillment. But not everyone will understand or support these goals, and sometimes sharing them too soon can invite skepticism, doubt, or even criticism from others. People who are not on the same path may not see the value in what you're striving for, or may attempt to minimize your vision because they don't share the same belief in its possibility. Additionally, revealing the full scope of your ambitions can place undue pressure on you. When you're failures before you've processed them. Failure is an inevitable part of the human experience, and we all encounter it at various points in our lives. It's often in these moments of failure that we learn the most about ourselves, our resilience, our capacity for growth, and our ability to adapt. But when failure is still fresh, it can feel overwhelming, like a weight that's hard to bear. At this stage, it's crucial to give ourselves the time and space to process the emotions and lessons before sharing them with others. Revealing a failure before we fully come to terms with it can leave us vulnerable in ways that prevent us from truly healing. We may be tempted to seek validation or sympathy, hoping others will offer comfort or reassurance. However, when we haven't fully processed the failure ourselves, we may not be able to express it in a way that feels empowering or constructive. Instead, we may find ourselves stuck in the emotional aftermath of that failure, unable to view it with the perspective needed to learn and grow from it. Moreover, sharing our failures too soon can also invite judgment from others. While some people may respond with empathy, others may react with criticism, disappointment, or even indifference. The rawness of our emotions in those early moments can lead to misinterpretation or further feelings of inadequacy. Until we've had time to reflect, understand what went wrong, and begin to rebuild our confidence, sharing our failure can feel like handing over a part of ourselves that we are not yet ready to expose to others. The full extent of your emotional world. Emotions are complex and multifaceted. We experience them in layers, sometimes so intensely that they can feel like overwhelming waves. From moments of deep joy to intense sorrow, from anger to peace, our emotions shape how we perceive the world and our place in it. However, our emotional world is vast and sometimes not easily understood by others, especially when the emotions are raw or contradictory. Revealing the full extent of our emotional world to others, especially in moments of emotional intensity, can leave us feeling exposed. While vulnerability can be a source of strength, sharing emotions without context or reflection can result in a misalignment between how we feel and how others interpret those feelings. The full range of our emotional state, especially when we're caught in a whirlwind of complex emotions, may not be something others can hold for us. If we express these emotions too openly or prematurely, we risk being misunderstood or judged in ways that deepen our emotional turmoil rather than offering relief. Furthermore, when our emotions are at their height, they can be chaotic, fleeting, and unpredictable. We may not have the clarity we need to communicate what we're truly feeling, and we may regret sharing these feelings later when we have had time to process them. The vulnerability of exposing all our emotional depths can sometimes feel like an invitation for others to react without fully understanding or without the necessary compassion to meet us where we are. This is why, in moments of intense emotional experience, it's important to pause and take time to understand ourselves before we share our emotions with others. As we navigate life, we are constantly learning the delicate balance between vulnerability and protection. There is immense power in being open, in sharing our stories, and in connecting with others. But there are also parts of ourselves, our deepest insecurities, unhealed wounds, personal boundaries, internal battles, ambitions, failures, and emotional worlds that deserve to be guarded and understood on our own terms. The strength comes not just in sharing all of who we are, but in knowing when to protect the most tender parts of ourselves until we are ready to let them be seen. True vulnerability is not about revealing everything at once. It's about knowing what to hold close, what to nurture, and when to share. So let us walk forward with the wisdom to guard the most sacred parts of ourselves and the courage to share them when the time is right. In doing so, we protect our authenticity, our peace, and ultimately our well-being. Thank you.